3, 2, 1.
Live from the Rob Kristjansson Radio Network Satellite Studio, it's Jim and Rob Overanalyze the Movies. Well, there was a little bit of a bump and a skip and a start there. That said, welcome everyone to Jim and Rob Overanalyze Movies, the video podcast for people who love to talk about movies as much as they love watching them. Today, we're going to be taking a look at The Dark Divide, a 2020 film starring David Cross and Debra Messing, written and directed by Tom Putnam, based on the book Where Bigfoot Walks, Crossing the Dark Divide by Robert Michael Pyle. Speaking of which, folks, there is, if you want to read the book the film was based on, there's a link in the description below, along with other books in the Jim and Rob Overanalyze, the Jim and Rob Film Studies bookstore. So feel free to check that out. Anyway, before we get really into the meat of it and everything, I also want to give you a heads up. I do have an anecdote coming up. Some entertaining news I got earlier this week that both I'm excited to share with you, but also look like a bit of a chump on. Anyway, so where are we now? Yes, The Dark Divide. The log line here, basically, The Dark Divide, it tells the story of renowned butterfly expert Robert Pyle, played by David Cross, who, after the death of his wife, played by Debra Messing, embarked on a life-changing trek through one of America's most important wildlands, the state of Washington. Washington State's Gifford Pinchot National Forest. As I said, stars David Cross and Debra Messing. It also stars Cameron Esposito, Gary Farmer, Kimberly Guerrero, Patterson Hood, and David Koechner, who, while have everyone has very small roles, other than the two leads. Really nice notes in the film. As far as its ideological ingredients, it doesn't pass the Bechdel tester. You know what? It kind of does. And maybe we'll discuss that a little further as far as the story side goes. Does it have class consciousness? I think we might be able to give it an honorable mention, but maybe we'll get into that when we're talking about some of the performances, the story, and the meaning. Further on production, would it earn a reframe stamp? I don't believe so. Although that'll be determined later. And is it a union-made film? The only logo I found was for the Screen Actors Guild / AFTRA, the Actors Union. I don't believe they were using a union crew here, so it fails on that. It fails there. So with that out of the way, one more thing that I think you guys should know. Tomorrow, here, let me move this out of the way. Tomorrow, both Jim and I, along with friends of the show, Cody from the Brockup side and Sean from Lost in the Reel, we're gonna get together and talk about. Oops, sorry. It's like a kind of low rent public access show right now. We're going to talk about the Oscar nominations at 9:30 p.m. Central we're in Central Daylight Time, UTC -5 tomorrow night. The announcements are made tomorrow morning, and we'll be here tomorrow night to make fun of them. Okay, now I really do think that's about it. I think it's time to introduce a host or two. We do have a special guest with us, but first, let me bring on my hiking buddy, who I've never actually hiked with, but would hope he'd be there to drag me out of some godforsaken hole I've fallen into. The man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Jim Chliboyko. How you doing, Jim?
Good. Always
Excellent.
bring polysporin with you, and don't leave it. Don't lose it. Don't lose it in the creek. Get a big, like those big margarine containers, but just with polysporin in it.
Yeah. So forever strapped to your waist.
Yes, exactly.
separate from your clothing that for whatever reason you feel the desperate need to take off.
With an applicator like how you put on stucco on the side of buildings. But anyway.
Absolutely. All right, folks. And like I said, we do have a special guest. If you follow us on Twitter, and you should, you know what? You'll know that we're welcoming back the wonderful, the inimitable, the incomparable Ms. Katie Fowler. How you doing,
Hello.
Katie?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
Nope.
Very well, very well. Looks again. I said it before when we were like in the green room. Looks like you got a little sun.
Yes.
Did you get out this weekend? I didn't.
Yes. Yeah, continuing to get out every day, especially now that the weather's warming up here in Canada.
Winnipeg.
So you went to Winnipeg? Yes. It's above 0 now, so that's nice.
Fantastic. Listen, folks, I kind of hinted at it, and Jim's kind enough to play dumb. I might have called him earlier this week, but you haven't heard this. And folks in
What?
the chat, yeah, what? Thank you, Jim.
What's happening?
I have an anecdote for you all. I recently, so a couple of weeks ago, let me regale you with this tale. A couple of weeks ago, I was checking comments, and I felt like a schmuck. There was a comment on we had watched back in the summer. I don't know if you remember this, Katie. Do you remember, Jim? It was the Netflix original.
Stupid and futile gesture.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yes. And in August, I actually did I kind of condensed our chat around a review. And so I put it out there in August. And I guess sometime in November, when we didn't even have 60 subscribers, Jim, when I was like, any comment, including junk mail comments, spam comments, got 100% of my attention. It was hard not to love them as well. Anyway, this David, chimes in, says, likes the review, and then sends a link, likes the review, and sends a link to a deleted scene regarding the Bechdel test, because at the time, the movie that we watched didn't pass it. And I actually was like a bit of a pill on the subject. I mean, they did kind of talk about their lack of diversity, but anyway. Mm-hmm. So, and it was funny actually. So I share the link with Jim. Comment, I'm really sorry. I'm sorry. I feel like I'm a schmuck for missing your comment. Thank you very much. And then I go to Buddy's channel where this deleted scene is. I don't know. I got it. Whatever. I'm like, hey, thanks for this, but I'm still not sure. It's actually a really neat little scene where two women are talking to each other about how lame this, like they barely even passed the Bechdel test with this. And it was like, I can probably why it got cut is it affected pacing. It was kind of extending the scene. But anyway, it was kind of on point. And I said, I'm not quite sure it passes because they're still referring to the other guys. And I move on with my life. Week and a half later, like this is now earlier in this week. I swear to God, you guys, I'm on my phone. Can I show it? Oh, I can barely bring it in. Well, whatever. I'm on my phone, screwing around on TikTok instead of getting work done, as one does. Mm-hmm. And I find this guy who had made the post. I find this guy's message, or I find his profile on TikTok, and I'm like, I'll follow him. He's the same guy, he's some comic or something. He's the same guy, and I make the connection. Hey, I think I recognize that. I think he's the same guy who chimed in. A little bit later, still screwing around, something bugging me. Just click, put the two together. It's the fucking director of the goddamn movie.
Wow.
What? Holy cow!
Needless to say, I had to call Jim. Anyway, the director of the goddamn movie watched the review, and so I'm like, oh my God, I feel now like double schmuck. But it was a really positive comment. He says, I like the review. Here's a scene that speaks to the Bechdel issue. I'm like, this is cool. Watch the review I made. And I was kind of critical. Like, we liked the movie, but I was like, kind of, well, it's, maybe it's just some Harvard guys jerking off a different class of Harvard guys. And, it's like, it's not like I was just kissing the guy's ass or anything. I might have even made a comment about where he went to school.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. So the fact that he read it and sent this link, I thought that was awesome.
Yeah.
Katie, Jim.
Crazy.
It's only the other day. But I'm typing this up because I want to tell some folks in class, and I'm getting ready for this show. And so I'm double checking things. It's an unlisted video. And you look at the date and everything, and it's like, I think he actually saw the review, pulled the deleted scene, because directors have those, pulled it, posted it specifically to address my issue.
Unbelievable.
Wow.
It's crazy, right?
I was going to ask about that part. Yeah.
That's crazy. Wow.
I mean, and I'm like, just, this is both.
That's wild.
I look like a schmuck. It's like, and again, you guys, what? You can imagine, and he is like, he directed. I think he also wrote and at least directed Wet Hot American Summer. Part of the creative team that did the reboot for Netflix. Directed. Oh my goodness, they're all on the tip of my tongue. Like, he's the real effing deal.
And he is a crazy filmography too, David Wayne.
Yeah, as an actor, he is a comic. He's legit. And all I can think of is, like, probably, at least for a few days, he's probably, this guy doesn't have 60 subscribers. He can't, fucking guy can't. Who the hell does he think he is? Who is this fat YouTuber? Can't even be bothered to, what, he's overwhelmed with comments? Apparently
we only answer to David Lean types,
Anyway, I'm embarrassed, because I felt bad initially just because it's somebody commenting. Engagement is our thing, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I just felt bad about that. And then it's like, oh, I look stupid. And then it's, apparently I'm looking dumber than I originally thought. While at the same time, though, I am super chuffed about this. It's everything, like Jim and you've helped us, Katie, and everybody in the chat. It's one of those validating moments where it's like, we're on the right track. What we're doing, the way we look at a film, is something that a director, I'm sorry, I'm really chuffed about this. I'm just jazzed. A Hollywood director is looking at the way we look at a movie, the way I reviewed it and qualified it, and going, here's my answer to that point you made, that actually liked it, and it was like, that's just fucking cool. I am just so jazzed. I'm also, like, Jim and I have already kind of agreed, we're not going to go after, like, promotional interviews. This is something we talked about months ago, if we ever got anywhere. Even more so now, because I'm still so giddy over it. If I ever interviewed somebody anyway, like, oh my goodness, they're talking to me. Whatever you want to say. I'd never be able to be honest.
No.
Ever. So anyway, I needed to share that with you two, and I needed to share that with the folks in the chat, and then I may cut a little time link for Mr. Wayne and send it to him, so at least he gets the explanation. It's like, I know I'm a schmuck who couldn't be bothered to answer your...
Wow. I don't know if I've told this story before on this live stream, but I interviewed Jeff Goldblum once, and I was totally, like, I was useless. I'd never met somebody that charismatic, and he's exactly the same, in real life as he, actually, that's, doing that kind of thing. It was, and I was just, you could have knocked me over with a feather. I was, it just totally disarms you. So that's a whole new kind of experience that I think we'd have to need if we went that direction. But I don't think that's in the cards necessarily. Or even But having said that, this has been super cool. So
yeah. Oh, I do, and I again, Jim, I look at it as just validating what we're doing. You know, the way we approach it, the way we look at a movie, we're being honest. We're not being tools about it. We're not going outside the boxes we've created for ourselves. You know what? We're not, oh, that's a bad actor and that person can't do this. We're not talking about the script needed work or any of that BS. We're being honest, and it really does. It just jazzes me, guys. So anyway, I needed to share that with you, and I guess it's now time to move forward, eh? You've enjoyed my anecdote. I've gotten, and I should be proclaimed king of the humble brag as well, because I think that was some grade A humble bragging.
Well, that's it's funny too, because that would be a great party anecdote.
Katie's nodding away. Yeah, no, that's. Oh, go ahead, Jim.
We're not having. It would be a great party anecdote, but we're not having parties these days. So.
Believe me, Jim.
Totally.
It'll show up at a party.
Oh yeah.
We will be able to go to parties once again.
Oh yeah.
He's just adding it to the queue.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Katie. I have a couple of anecdotes, but this is definitely going to be a. In the at the top of the batting order.
Yeah.
Our new segment, Brush with Greatness.
All right, guys. Now that we've smart remarks aside, now that I've gotten my bragging out of the way, let's get this all set up. First of all, I mean, as you guys know, we'll start with our first thoughts, get those kind of initial reactions, think of that 1 minute review, and then we'll jump into the more of the is it worth your time? Then we'll get into the spoiler zone. So keep your first thought spoilers to yourselves. Otherwise, Katie, your company today. Why don't you kick us off? Tell us, give us your first thoughts.
Yeah, I enjoyed the movie. Spectacular scenery, obviously. I definitely want to go there now as a result. Tight, small, but great cast. They all, the few of them that were in it carried the movie well. I found. I don't think there was a need for many other additional supporters there. And loved the soundtrack. The music was great that accompanied the movie. Passes the baby test, so that I was happy to see that. And an interesting anecdote I have is which I can delve into later, I guess, as we go on to those certain things.
Give us a taste now, though.
I'll give you a taste, though. Is one interesting thing I found from watching the movie is that I've never heard my husband say "idiot" so many times in my life. You probably know what we're referring to, but
it will come up, won't it?
Yeah, so that'll come up, but just to give you a little taste of what's to come. Yeah, so that was it was funny, but it was and another taster, I guess, is I'm a fan of David Cross, so that helped too. So I'm not I'll get more into my thoughts about the two main actors when it comes to that time. Cool. But I have some interesting thoughts about them. So
you bet. All right. Yeah. Well, thanks very much, Katie. Jim, take it away.
I wrote out mine, so if it sounds like I'm reading it, it's because I am. So the Dark Divide answers the age-old question of what does David Cross look like in a pair of Y fronts? It also sort of reminds
me.
Oh,
nice.
I feel ambushed. It also reminds me there's a Tina Fey joke in 30 Rock. It said this place looks about as diverse as a Wilco concert. But joking aside, this is a frequently touching, surprisingly not maudlin movie. There's sadness, but I didn't find it maudlin or even sentimental in that way. About loss and transformation and moths. Essentially, it's a sort of a two-hander, sprinkled with a few one-scene cameos. It's one of those movies that feels like a book, and if you watch it at the right time of year, like spring, it'll make you want to fall down a lava tube in central Washington all on your own. So that's what I went for.
All right. Thanks for that, Jim. You know what? I'll echo your guys' comments. I was half expecting wild, and although we've got a film like the one starring Reese Witherspoon, because in a lot of respects it's a very similar kind of movie. We've got death, personal loss, transformation, a big journey to change. I mean, the character motivations are different, but it's, in many respects, it's this slice of life / adventure with, throwing in throwing in grief. That said, I'm kind of, we'll get into it more. I did like the fact, though, that our lead character was not just an idiot and sometimes entertaining, sometimes frustratingly so, but that he was a bit of a prick and a kind of a not detestable character, but he certainly had points where I'm like, I know that guy, I don't like him, but I can still sympathize with him. He still grows, but I think he's still the same guy, and in the best possible way. Like, I'm not. It felt a lot more real to me. This guy in his 50s would be like this versus Reese Witherspoon's character, and I kind of like that. So, anyway, that's more than we needed to know. Why don't we? What we'll do now, guys, if it's cool with you, is we will quickly ask everyone if it's worth their time. It's a yes or no question. Quick recommend to the audience. Then we'll say hello to everyone in the chat, and we'll get into the spoiler zone. Sound good?
Sounds great.
All righty. Okay. No. Katie.
It's worth your time. Yes.
Katie, is it worth their time? Yes?
Yeah.
Jim?
Yes.
All right. And I agree. Yes, it's worth your time. All right. Okay. Before we hit the sound, let's say hello to everyone in the chat. Okay. We've got a small crowd with us tonight. It is, hours before the Oscars come out, so I suspect a lot of our people are snug as bugs in rugs, or the spring forward has totally jammed them up. But that makes it all the more calmer for what is, I think, in some ways a little deeper than some of the movies we've seen recently. So that'll make it a little easier. Let's first of all, let's give a big wave to Mr. Richard L.
Woo!
Who may be just out of frame where Katie is.
Behind the couch.
And then we've got my good friend, another guest host on the show, another friend of the show, my good internet friend, Mr. Curtis Judd.
Woo!
And Curtis was kind enough to relay some of his. I really do love the attaboys that you're not expecting, you're not looking for, those unasked for kind of boosts to your confidence, I guess. Like it pushes back the imposter syndrome. It's those validating moments you're not working towards, except in a general sense. And Curtis was kind enough, I asked him, and he was kind enough to share some of his this morning on his live stream, and it was super cool. So thanks very much for that, Curtis. And he did say, and I think Jim and I have talked about this, one of the most important things is says, you really know you're starting to make it when jerks on the internet come out, when the trolls come out and start to be really mean, then you know you've made it on the internet. And then, Richard agrees that it was worth their time. And Curtis is, yes, we have an intimate crowd tonight, which is lovely. All right, everybody, with that out of the way, let's get, here, if I can find where I am in my agenda, let's get into it. Katie, why don't you start us off one more time, and let's talk about the sound, not just the soundtrack, but the soundscape. Like, was there any particular highlights you wanted to talk about, or?
Well, certainly they, in that region of the continent, going BC, Washington, Oregon, around there on the coast, you could tell visually that it's a place, it's so green that you can tell it rains a lot there. And they really, show that in this film. And I think, you can hear it. You could hear the rain. And just from hearing it, you could almost, I guess, feel it in a way. You can just place yourself there. And I've been on, hikes, or I've been in the outdoors where it's, just rained relentlessly, and I can totally relate to that. So the sound really brought that out. Just the wet and even, just almost the humidity there in a way, like just, so definitely wet and damp. Permanently damp. Yeah. So not just visually, but yeah, definitely with sound. So yeah, with the walking and the hearing the rain coming down and being wet. Yeah, that was.
I wanted to ask, like, both you and Jim, like you and your husband have spent a lot of time out there. You've done some real hiking out there, some real tromping around. Jim, you lived in BC for several years, so I was really kind of curious. Like, it felt real to me, but I was wondering, did it feel real to you guys as people who spent time out there? And that's cool to hear.
Yeah. You can be in like Coquitlam, and you sort of go a couple blocks this way, a couple blocks that way, and you find yourself in some old stand, usually in a park setting or something, and you're fully in the rainforest. Even Central Park, Burnaby Central Park. I mean, it's been thinned out over time, but you can just north of North Vancouver. Who knows what's up there? It's like the Bermuda Triangle. So it's pretty cool. Pretty cool stuff. And you find yourself in these great overgrown areas. So sorry, Katie, go ahead.
Yeah. Katie, what you'd mentioned the soundtrack and you enjoyed it. Is there any particular highlights as far as the soundtrack went? The actual music of the piece, or?
Yeah, to be honest, it was more about who was on the soundtrack. So, David Brothers, for instance, I'm a fan of theirs. So it's
okay. Oh, so you recognize them?
Yeah. And I mean, I did notice I think they went to that playbook a lot, like where they played David Brothers or similar types of music in certain scenes. It's like, oh, they're playing like that, a male folksy artist while he's doing this. And so I think they did play that. Okay. I think I counted 3 times, and I was like, it worked. I'm sure they could have used something else too, but I did notice that. I'm like, oh,
for you.
Yeah, it worked for me. Like, I heard it the first time, like, oh, I love this song. And then they did it again and it worked again. But it was kind of like, I guess they found a recipe that worked, and why try something else? Maybe, I don't know. But yeah, so great artists they had on there. So
yeah. Jim, why don't you give us your take on the sound?
Sure. I mean, again, it was another fairly quiet movie. I mean, we're talking about the music, and there is lots of music. There's not so much of a score. I think there was a couple times where a score came in. I can think of one. I think he hits a fork in the trail. Was it one go that way or that way? And there's a little, there's a few seconds of music, but most of all, it was songs by the Avett Brothers and a few others that they used. And I feel that they used them sparingly. A lot of the soundtrack of this was actually bird song. Like it was the sounds of the woods. And we've been sort of talking about how movies can be quiet. And I guess it's either the types of movies that we're watching lately, or maybe just movies are quieter than I think they are when you're not watching, the Hobbs and Shaw
Marvel.
or Fantastic and Furious or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Marvel movies, or when you go to the eightplex, when you go to Silver City or whatever, you can often hear the explosions in the movie next to you, and that drives me sort of crazy. But some of these movies that we've been watching lately, maybe it's coincidence, they're very quiet. So when they do, I think one of the things that they did in this movie was they would have minutes and minutes of bird song or wind or rain. And then inevitably he would run into the sounds of progress, which would be saws. And even earlier on, he's working on his beautiful electric typewriter. Remember those? Where you just got the little little
LCD display at
the
bottom there. Yeah.
I had one. Carla bought me one for my birthday back in a million years ago. But and then he stopped, and a big industrial, sort of like a big logging truck went by, and it was conspicuous for its power and its the sort of the industrial sounds. And again, anytime he's woken up, which happens a lot, he
and
either
the intrusion, guys?
Yeah,
that intrusion of progress.
Yeah,
the industrial world.
He seems to get woken up by often saws or something in that time that he thought it was little ATVs or something, and he goes to shout at them, and they're with the forest department, you dink, or whatever they say. I'm paraphrasing.
Forestry Service.
Yeah, Forestry Service. But
we're
it sort of reminded me
for 5 times Manhattan.
There's this company that advertised on CNN, especially on Sunday morning, called Dan Gote. It's like, Dan Gote, we're transforming Africa. And they show a bunch of machinery chewing up a jungle. And I think, did you focus test this at all? That doesn't look good. Is this what you're trying to achieve with that? But anyway, because it's progress, right? And then even when he hits the Columbia Gorge, the first thing you hear is a train whistle, and they show a train going back. So I think that was used particularly effectively. The rain on the tent, the flapping of the tent, sounds of thunder, even the deep depth of the bear, when he's sort of decides to hide out in the lava tubes there, the depth of the bear's growling and that kind of thing. So I think sound was used super effectively, and the silence was noticeable.
Mm-hmm. What did you got? Myself, always the bummer going third. I agree with you. That said, there was a weird note, I thought, at the very end. He achieves what he set out to achieve. And then the song comes on, and I thought it was, and I'm not saying you wouldn't hear that out of some pickup truck in the area. Heck, pickup truck, in Winnipeg. But it was almost too country. It wasn't folky. It was like, it just felt country western, and it was really one of those, probably the only auditory off note in the entire thing. Like, I noted it. Now, off note to me, not necessarily to you guys. And I wanted to ask about that. But otherwise, pretty much everything you say. They use music very sparingly. It's, almost on the nose, like Katie was saying. Otherwise, it's the sound of nature, the sound without hammering us. And that's an interesting note you make, Jim. a lot of the movies we've been watching, you know, mind you, we're also now consciously asking the question, right?
Yeah, that's true.
But it is something I really should have noted that. We're in the spoiler zone now, folks. Oh, when I update the chapters later, that'll be accurate. Yeah, that would be the only off note, and I was kind of curious what you guys thought. Katie, what did you like? Am I talking out of my ASS, or did just that moment work for you when he's at the end of the trail and he really is like kind of, oh, I'm done, and you got this big pan across the gorge, and you're hearing country music, or was it pan across the gorge and then you see the two? I don't want to call them rednecks. The bike
locals,
motorbike, the local motorbike enthusiasts, cross country enthusiasts. But it didn't seem to be motivated that way. So I don't know. What did you think, Katie? Or what did you think?
It didn't really stick out to me as being off. So
okay.
Yeah, but
what about you, Jim? Did you? Is it just?
I was just trying to look up on TuneFind if they had, because sometimes they do a listing, but I hadn't noticed it really. I thought, I mean, if anything, if it was different, it's because he's sort of re-entering civilization, I guess, or you could say that along his journey, a lot of it would be music that suited him. Then he was in the company of other guys who may even be, in a different setting, his enemies of some sort. So.
It would have been cool, I think, if it was diegetic, like in the scene or turned into in the scene.
Yeah.
Where he has changed. You know, he's not the pill he was when he ran into the same types of dudes before. Like, he's a lot more kind of, you know what, we're all just out here doing our best. Plus, probably was thinking, oh my God, I've survived. I don't need to die right at the end. Okay. Otherwise, as far as sound goes, that's my take on it. Otherwise, I'm with you guys. Yeah. Well done, well designed. And what was important to me is what you guys confirmed. It sounded like this very similar forests you guys have wandered through. Like I was in BC when I was a kid in cadets. And we spent one weekend out in the hills, like in the mountains, actually. So it wasn't that rainforest vibe. Like it was just too high. It was not as dense. It was too cool. It was lovely.
Where was it?
Vancouver Island. Comox.
So Comox. Yeah, that's actually there's actually a different area there where it's technically a deciduous forest, not rainforest. Like just under Mount Washington, I think it's called, and it's actually noted as being a separate kind of a.
Well, then my memory is legit.
Oh, absolutely!
Like I remember it correctly because it's
farmland too.
That, pardon?
Yeah, it's also a fairly well-established farming area to the Campbell River Comox kind of thing. So that's pretty cool, but different than the rest of Vancouver Island because you can go 100 kilometers north and it would be like in that movie. So
okay. Well then, folks, I think let's move to the look. And Katie, I'll let you off the hook briefly.
Okay.
Jim, why don't you talk about the look for a bit?
Sure.
Tell us what you thought of that.
One of the most interesting things to me was, I don't know if I'm using the correct terminology, but it was that slow pan out. That's often seen in sort of 70s movies, but they'd show him walking. I think one shot he was walking on a dry riverbed, and the camera would sort of slow pan out or zoom out. Is that a thing? But anyway, it was kind of some interesting shots like that that I thought were kind of a little bit of nod to old movie making, but that you'd see in sort of like take a look at this kind of the vista, and certain things too, like doing the 360 when he finally arrives at the gorge was kind of an interesting thing. But in terms of
a couple of times that 360 shot.
Yeah, that was kind of neat too. It started off the very first few minutes when they're just showing elements of the journey. They're showing the close-ups, micro shots of the tape cassette and something on the dashboard and other stuff in the car. And I thought this is all sort of building a picture of what's going on. It was very. I've been reading a lot of graphic novels lately, and it struck me that there was this one sequence where David Cross, Bob is in the middle of the forest. He sees a creek. He sees the log. He goes to walk on the log, and you don't really see it. The next thing you see is a bunch of his stuff floating down the river. And if you're paying attention,
it's a great bit.
And it's a great bit, and they do that a lot. There's a couple real subtle shots, and it almost is a comic book way of, in a good sense, telling the story. Like you go frame, and you can fill in the rest yourself. If you read comic book theory, it's the stuff that goes on between the boxes that sometimes is the more interesting stuff. They just have to allude to it, right? I mean, that's understanding comics and that, from that book. But so it was a great shot, and it was just, it looked cool. A lot of drone shots. I think you'd appreciate that, Rob. And but in terms of the color palette and stuff, I mean the green jumped out, and it sort of helped that it was summertime, early summer, and so you maybe were out of the wet season into the dry season, so the sun on the moss. There's that one time when he was digging under a log, and the whole log was mossy, like green with moss, and it was probably late afternoon, and it just looked fantastic. It's that kind of thing that's like, oh, I want to get out there, I want to go traveling, and so there was, good use of even the end credits. It was just his bag propped up against a tree, and the trail leading into the woods, and it was a really great look. There was one. It was really well composed too. Whenever he woke up, he always seemed to be puzzled when he was waking up in his tent, which I don't think had a fly. I was thinking, shouldn't there be a fly on that tent? But anyway, that's the covering to get rid of the rain. But it almost reminded me of the Seven Nation Army video. Jack White, what's his band? The White Stripes. Yeah, and it's all triangles. And so he gets up, and he's just in this sort of triangular tunnel. And it's like this, and he's at the end, like he's the focus of it, but it's just like triangles. And I thought, I kept on watching this. I think there's a lot of really great, intriguing shots in this that you might not see in other movies. So I really did like the look. I thought it was really smartly directed, or just the shots. I think. It didn't take the audience's intelligence for granted. We should also say that Tom Putnam, who is the director, one of his previous works, and I don't mean to bring this up in a mean way, was The Haughty and the Naughty with Paris Hilton. And the reason why I'm mentioning this is when I was looking at the Dark Divide.
Sometimes you got to take that paycheck gig to do your arty non-union thing out in the woods.
Oh, absolutely. So I'm not making fun, but when I was doing searches for this, The Haughty and the Naughty kept on coming up, and I thought, what is going on? And it was only about 10 minutes before we started, I looked at his filmography, and I thought, oh, okay, that kind of explains it. But yeah, so really good job on the storytelling, telling the story through the look, I think, did a good job.
Yeah. No, I agree with you, Jim. What I love about this kind of cinematography is they have no problem trying to tell a story in long shot. There's some great static long shots where he's just walking through the woods, and you really get a sense of the scale of the place, even though it's super dense. And yeah, you're right, Jim. And it's even a great bit of you don't hear an inner monologue. It is always just him working his stuff out. You never once hear him. He never narrates his own, and now I will take this, and oh, there is that thing. We might see what the very rare beastie is in his notebook, but it's never. It like I said, they really do a great job of showing, not telling, whenever possible. And I agree with you. I love that scene because it's okay. Super no confident. It's that people who got a lot of experience. You know, there's that weird curve, right? So no experience here, and then you're like. Somewhere down here, you think you've got enough experience, you think you know what you're doing, and that's when you die. And then finally get to the other side where you got a lot of experience and you're appropriately cautious. You know, and you can kind of see that moment where, you know, first he's like literally crawling over the log. Then he's, oh, that's pretty confident. Oh, that makes sense. You know, and I like that that graphic novel aspect you mentioned. You know, it really was. The composition, the mise en scene, it was wonderful. Katie, what were your thoughts on the look?
I did notice the I did like that scene where his things kind of started coming down the stream there, and when I was watching him, like, oh, there's his. I was kind of listening to him off, and I was like, oh, it's just a waterfall of things, and it's. I think it's every hiker's worst nightmare for that to happen, and or you know, any other outdoor adventure like canoeing or something like that. It's with that,
losing your
seeing that is like, your heart drops, and then you see what happens afterwards, him just in the water, just trying to get out, and so that was an interesting bit, and it also portrayed, I think it portrayed his lack of his ill preparedness very well, like with not having a fly in his tent, and you know, just frolicking around trying to catch a butterfly, not looking where he's going, and he almost like falls off the side of the cliff, and so that was just so the scenery the what was going on behind him looked great, but it was they portrayed that well,
and the drama played out either an extreme close-up or long shot, you know, like they don't, they and some of the best drama where he's at the edge of the cliff, you're on the other side of the gorge or whatever, like you're far when you see him swinging away like a nut, you know, we're forever, the cinematography, wherever possible, puts us as far away as we can to just observe this guy behaving like he's a member of nature, half naked or whatever. That's a great great insight there.
And the long shots too of the drone shots of just showing, like, it's such a
little frozen on Katie.
It's mesmerizing for any.
Oh, say that again, Katie. You cut in and out there a bit.
Sorry.
Good.
The drone shot.
Unless you're doing it on purpose.
No. The drone shot. That's just awe-inspiring. Just looking down at the trees, you always see that, you see the narrow road. It just raptures anybody who sees it, and it's so green and lush, probably because they do get a lot of rain out there, so it's such a beautiful look that way. And I guess one interesting thing I found is with the look, when they were going back to the flashbacks of him with his wife, and they were at one thing I noticed, especially in this instance, when they were at the party, and Debra Messing's character was talking to a couple of girlfriends and or women at the party, and I noticed the camera would kind of move around a bit, like it wasn't. So it almost felt like it almost seemed like it would, you know, slump down or something like that, and so it almost felt like you were the person standing there, kind of like just putting your arm on the bar table, kind of listening or whatever. So I thought that was kind of interesting. It wasn't like kind of a, you know, still back and forth sort of thing. There was some movement there, like that seemed more natural. So that was something else I noticed in those scenes anyway.
Well, like
in those social settings,
right, Katie, where the camera is trying to be our stand-in, our observer.
Yeah.
You know, we're not. Yeah, you're right. Because that scene wasn't over the shoulder. You know, it is.
No.
It's a moment in a party. You could have been walking through and you just couldn't get past them, so you're listening.
You're
in.
stuck listening. Yeah.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
that's on that quickly. You know what? David Cross's character does come up, but they weren't talking about him. She's just relaying an anecdote. I'd say that's Bechdel test passe. Look, I mean, none of these things are ever perfect.
Well, they were talking. She was talking about, I guess, her
car rental.
wild drive. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which he
I'd
wasn't
have
there.
to watch it again, but yeah.
Yeah, I like. I mean, he comes in later. You know, he comes into the anecdote maybe later, but she really is. I rented this car, and then I did this. Ladies.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a tough one. It's kind of a gray area, and you guys are right. Yeah, watch it again. Heck, it's not like. Well, who knows? Maybe another director will go, "What do you mean it didn't pass the Bechdel test? God damn it!"
We're
Start
goading
getting hate
them.
mail.
Poke. Poking
okay.
the bear.
Listen, before we move to the next thing, and I do. Oh, look at this! The Upside Dan came in. He's just popping in. Nice to see you pop in. Thanks very much, Dan. Before we move on, guys, I guess two things. One, I think it is time to shamelessly beg everyone who's watching for a like. Also, you know what? If you can subscribe, if you haven't already, subscribe so you know when next time we're putting out some nonsense. And then, of course, last but not least, please ringy-ding that bell.
My neighbors probably wonder what it's dinner time.
Yeah.
10:30 at night. I don't
And
know.
always late on a Sunday night. It's like,
Yeah.
what weird religion are they part of?
I don't know.
Katie, before we move to, get into the performances and everything, I mean, this was that you had suggested this film. Why don't you, why don't you tell us why you picked this film? Like, what was it about this movie that you thought, that worked for you? Certainly has a travel.
Yeah, it has a travel theme, and David Cross, I guess, is part of it too. I'm a fan of his acting. Mainly from Arrested Development, but I figured his character would be different here, and it was. It seems similar to some other movies that I'd seen that I enjoyed, like The Way and The Wild, and I thought it'd just be a neat way to see that part of Washington. And it was when you've seen something before, like a similar story, and you're curious to know how it's adapted differently, and you enjoyed the other ones. So that was part of it too. Is like, I've seen this before. How is it? Are they gonna do it better with this one? Is it not gonna be as good? And so that was part of that curiosity too. So travel theme, and also just like you've seen this before. You've seen this type of story, and you wonder if it holds up, or if they don't do as well, or that kind of thing. So,
do you guys ever find, like myself, once I read the log line and okay, this is what it's about, I was excited in part because of late, I don't know why, but of late I've really been thinking about the Wild with Reese Witherspoon and a couple of these other similar flicks. This slice of life, go on a personal adventure, whatever they're dealing with. They're having this personal adventure to kind of process their shit. Was that part of what was going on for you, Katie? You're just kind of jonesing for that a similar kind of story, or?
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to think. Well, the last one I'd seen that was similar storyline was The Way. It's been a while since I've seen The Wild. So, but yeah, I think it was just yeah. There's not a lot of when I was kind of doing looking into movies that are also travel related. Some of them kind of seem a bit cheesy, or I'm like, is that really a travel movie? Or and or they're old, and I've seen them and before already. So like,
Yeah.
it'd be more in the hold up,
Why go over
category.
old ground? Yeah.
Yeah. So I just
and
find
don't
that there
get me
aren't
wrong.
that many like that kind of fit that category, in my opinion. Anyways, like you see all these. They see all these blogs about them, and they list a lot of the same movies, and it's like, okay, well, I guess this is, yeah.
Oh, you know what? We're going to come back to that when we get into the story of it, because I've got a couple other ideas rolling around in my head, and I'd love to get your thoughts. And
Sure.
you're starting to touch on something, bringing up a new idea. Okay, guys, let's quickly, oh, we've done that. Yeah, Katie, you had mentioned you had some thoughts on the performances.
Yeah.
Why don't you?
Well, nothing.
let's-
Yeah. Hopefully,
let's
I'm not
get
sure if they're
into
hot
it.
takes, but
If they are, rest assured,
you're ready.
Rob's ready. To,
He's got
Okay.
That's a
Rob's ready to.
hot take.
Rob's ready to go.
Yeah, I would say overall, I thought the performances were great. Yeah, like I said before, my experience with David Cross is from Arrested Development as Tobias in that zany family. So seeing him here, and I know he's a comedian by trade, but so seeing him here in this role, I think he did a great job of playing just this, middle-aged professor, fumbling through the woods type, ill-prepared, or thinking he's more prepared than he is, and just, seeing that all come out, all of that unfold in the movie. He does it well. And yeah, like I said, there was so many cringeworthy moments with him, and so he executed those as my husband would say, idiotic moments where you're just and Richard just kept saying it over and over again. It was pretty funny. It's like, what is he doing? He's an idiot.
He's gonna die.
Yeah.
He's
he's like trying to catch the butterfly, and oh god. Yeah, so that was but he did, so he succeeded, like he succeeded playing that ill-prepared hiker. And then I was going to say that and then as far as Debra Messing goes, I can't speak fully about her past performances. I haven't really seen her do a lot other than, I guess it was Will and Grace, and even then I was,
That was her big
sort of
name, big thing.
yeah, and even then I was like sort of a fair weather watcher of that show. So so I can't really say I was a huge fan of hers because I just didn't really know her work other than that. But I thought she did a great job in this film, just playing. She looked like hell, and kudos to the people that did her makeup and everything else, because she looked like she was dying. So and sounded like it, and she acted like it, and she was. I think she did well in that role, and so small but tight cast there as far as the two leads go, and then and then of course the supporting players, as small as their bits were, I would say they delivered as well. So
They all felt real, eh?
yeah, and some of them I was thinking, especially those two guys at the end, like when he encounters that group picking berries, and then they have the gun and everything, I did recognize some of the actors in that group. But then at the end, with the two guys giving him a beer, I'm like, oh, I wonder if they just hired locals to do that, like, or if they were extras, because they didn't seem recognizable to me or anything like that.
Non-union. I bet you there's local AFTRA, like everyone was on a permit. Yeah, this is barely. I would argue it's a non-union show. They had to have SAG-AFTRA contracts because there's no way they would have gotten David Cross and Debra Messing, even Gary Farmer. Like, there are names there that are union names, and so they had to. And then whenever they could, like, all the locals were probably local Oregon actors.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Yeah.
We don't even have to drive you down. You're from the next town over.
Yeah. And they delivered, I'd say. Yeah, I thought that they fit in, like they didn't seem out of place or anything. And yeah, I think it all, there wasn't like, I wouldn't say there was an off performance that I can recall. So,
did you think, and maybe Jim, you'll speak more to this, but what I appreciated was David Cross as that bumbling professor. He didn't, though, feel like a stock character. He wasn't a caricature of that bumbling professor. He didn't, oh my, have I forgotten this? Or like some of those stock moves. He felt, they built enough of it. He built a great character that felt real.
Like there are people.
Went out,
There are people who are just like him doing that, for sure.
Yeah, and not even just doing that. Yeah, effing up out in the woods like that.
Yeah, totally.
It's why we have search and rescue. That and the overconfident young man who get drunk and get lost in the woods or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay, Richard, why don't you throw down, man? Performances.
Jim?
Oh, what did I call you?
Richard.
Oh, you know why? Because he has a good comment here. I'd put his comment.
Did you want to read that?
No. You continue, and then we'll close around.
No, it was good. It was sort of.
I was saying his name, but I was thinking about you, Jim.
That's. I don't know how you could have confused us. But I guess he doesn't wear glasses, does he? Does he wear contacts? I don't know. But anyway,
contacts and glasses.
I thought it was an interesting choice. Of course, this is based on a text, or a book. So that probably made the decision for them. But to have these people that he runs into, the Gary Farmer's character and David Keckner and his company, they only meet them once and then they're done.
Which is brilliant.
The young girl who works for the Forest Service, one scene and done. And so I kind of
Carmen Esposito. I thought she would have a big role here.
Carmen. And it's funny when you watch the trailer, you sort of think, I wonder how they're incorporated in this. But yeah, they're just like one scene and then done. So that was interesting, and it gave that sort of fleeting sense. That's more of a story element. But having said that, it's a two-hander essentially then, with a few little things, as I said at the top. So it's Debra Messing and David Cross's show. Debra Messing, I find her a little muggy on Will and Grace. It's a sitcom. They're supposed to play it pretty broad. But she was very, what's the word? Just uninhibited here. Like this is the sort of the realest I've ever seen her. I thought she was quite good, quite effective. David Cross was great. And the thing about the falling off the log scene, that they didn't show him fall off the log, you kind of think to yourself, well, he's a comic actor and he does physical comedy, right? And a lot of the things that happen to him are a little, he's falling in bear crap and a lot of that kind of thing. They actually didn't show this. And that was sort of an interesting pulling of the punch because, Tobias, the guy who plays Tobias Funk, falling off a log into water would be hilarious, right? But anyhow, but I thought he was great. I thought he was also, what's that?
No, continue. I'll wait for another pause.
I thought he was unaffected as well, like not affected in that sort of bad actorly habit sense. Like you were seeing the raw thing. When I watched the little plug of another show, Rob being on, is it Dan Simpson's live stream there? Dan Simpson. I was watching that, and he was bringing up when you were saying that we're doing this movie, he was saying, "Oh, is he pulling a Sandler?" And where you have a sketch comedy guy, or Mr. Show was serious, but going serious. Yeah, I'd like to do something really probing, and so Adam Sandler, of course, doing what was the movie he did with Scottish lady and director with three names? Yes, thank you. So that, but I even and I wrote it on Idan Simpson's YouTube thing. When I was a kid, Bill Murray did Razor's Edge with Somerset Maugham, and I was dying to see it. I wouldn't have gotten anything out of it, but yeah. So this is like the funny guy doing a serious thing, and he's not muddy either. He's fully committed and pretty raw too. Like it's that he looks foolish a lot of the time. He looks bad a lot of the time, and he allows himself to be vulnerable. And so I thought that was it's just a really sharp performance. I thought a little bit of for him probably a bit of a marathon rather than a sprint, but it was really effective. And some of the other scenes, the one with Gary Farmer, I don't know if I quite. They were at odds with each other. Can I have another cup of coffee? No. And then he just walks away. Yeah. I don't know. I maybe want to bounce that off too, but some of them were more effective than others anyway. I mean, at the end, you felt like you'd been through something with him. He gets into his car where he left it the month before, and you did have that feeling of coming full circle a little bit, getting back into the parked car that had been there for, in my case, 2 or 3 days, in his case, a month and a half or whatever it was. So, fully worth it.
Unintentionally killing the last spotted owl.
Scene, yeah.
I wonder, I was going to ask you guys, what I liked, you're absolutely right, Jim. Much like real life, if we went on that hike, better prepared or not, that is exactly the interactions. Well, we've all traveled. You meet someone, what are the chances of you ever seeing them again? Just like a place you go to, you might as well get the most of it, because you're probably never going back. You might go back to BC, but you're not going to necessarily go hike that trail and go to that thing again. You're gonna explore a different trail. You're gonna, and so this journey he takes, all those other people he meets are exactly as they would. They're little anecdotes, really to show where he is at that point in the journey. They are signposts, much like the literal signposts, to kind of show how he's changed a bit and show how much more change he needs. And they did that without being caricatures. Even the loggers are beating him up. I remember that time and how high tensions were. It made national news. It's like, as soon as I mentioned owl, and I'm like, oh, right, the spotted owl. Are you one of them? Well, that local resentment,
wasn't that all of George Bush's platform? Was no to owls, yes to jobs. I'm not kidding. It was something like that. That was he was one of their targets. So.
Yeah. Well, but that was happening in Canada too. The whole region, right? Yeah. I thought.
And then what?
That the way. Oh yeah.
No. Go ahead.
Well, I lost my train of thought now, so might as well continue.
Sorry, but David Cross's whole rant about once they're gone, they're not coming back. Was quite effective. I'm a birder myself, and at the very bottom, I was looking for the exact number today, but on ebird.org, the number is something like 10,700 species, give or take, 50 or so. I was looking for the exact number, but 100 years ago, that list.
You know what?
Well,
why don't we put a pin in
ebird.org,
that?
But
We're
100
getting
years
into
ago,
the story. Let's
Yeah.
put a pin in that.
yeah.
'Cause now we're getting into the story and the politics of the piece. So on that note, I'll kill the rest of my stuff on performance, and why
Right.
don't we move to the story? Jim, take over.
Sure.
Here,
Sorry.
let me,
Yeah. So I just, 100 years ago, that list would have been longer, and you don't get that chance again. That's kind of interesting. I was going to
do
say
you
another
think
interesting
that's
aspect.
part of the. Well, do you think that's part of the story? Like, was it or are they just? Is it because it's the context?
Yeah, I think so.
This was the time he did it, so
Yeah,
at least they're mentioning it.
and of course it was more about butterflies and moths, and his thing was, he was a guy who found new species. So
Yeah.
whereas birds are mostly, once in a while they'll find one that they thought was extinct. There was one that just this past month that happened in Indonesia or something. But generally they know a lot more about birds than they do about insects. But so they were still finding new ones. He was still, he himself had found a bunch. He had already some, and then on this trip he found some more. Named one of them after the Debra Messing character, Tia, and so to a plural sense, he was studying species that we still didn't know. He was doing a census, essentially, studying species that we still don't know enough about because they hadn't been studied, and this area had been overlooked, or it's just difficult to do the work there as well. So a little bit of a different sort of kettle of fish there. But I was going to mention too, an interesting aspect of his character was all his little T-shirts and stuff. Like he walked around with that National Butterfly Summit shirt for the light blue one for most of the movie, and he actually even had a Lewis and Clark sweatshirt as if to sort of he was aligning himself with the mighty wanderers of the prairie 150 years before, who had a slightly different, harder time of it. So that was kind of a nice little character note.
Yeah. Back to the story. Was
Sure.
there any off notes on the story? Like, it all seemed like, what do you have to say about the story itself? Like,
I think it touched on a little bit on, it seemed to, and of course, not having read the book, I kind of wonder about the whole Bigfoot aspect. Like, it was hinted at, and there was a couple mentions of it. It's mentioned in 2 of the 4 or 5 conversations he has on the trip.
Yeah.
And he finds a big footprint at one point, and then there's this smashing of the window afterwards. Now, was that? I didn't quite get what smashed the window. Were you saying it was an owl that flew into his car window?
Smashed it, right? Because
it was okay. Yeah.
He's hooting, right? Like think about it, guys.
Yeah.
So there he is. He's whistling like a bird, calling to another bird. When do owls hunt? At night. And they're using any cue they can. And here he's got lights on, and he's whistling. Stupid owl.
Yeah.
Which I thought was a great comic moment and a fascinating way to end the movie. Like, I do think it plays maybe a little bit of, it allows other opinions to have some dignity. And this was a nice little, hey, sometimes we're just killing the owl because we're there. Too busy being arty-farty about it.
Yeah.
I do. I thought it was like just a hilarious, darkly hilarious way to end the movie. Actually, it unintentionally bumps off an owl because that owl ain't making it. They move quick and it
smashed the glass,
smashed that window.
I thought it was. Yeah, I wasn't entirely sure it was. I thought it was
scene for the owl.
Yeah.
Probably the
and
same
so the-
one that sat on his head. Heck,
Which
could
was
have
quite
even
a-
been a reference to the way Debra Messing, his wife Tia, was. I felt, it's like, oh, okay, you've got the diagnosis. You went and rented a car, and you're like, I don't want to wreck a good car, but I'm upset. Are you guys buying that at all? Like, I mean, no, maybe not the owl connection.
Oh yeah.
Although she did, broke a couple of teeth, smashed her head into the windshield, like, because it's an old car.
And they have
90s.
those runaway lanes on the way to Kenora.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in BC. Yeah, and Alberta, I guess too.
Yes,
probably.
yeah. But yeah, so I thought they gave the Bigfoot thing a little bit of a short shrift, I guess there. And there's a couple other things that they think, had it been a few more minutes, they might have been able to sort of expand on a couple things. But
is there a scene or two on the cutting room floor about it? About the Bigfoot that they just had to kill for pacing or something.
Yeah. But a lot of the times that they did discuss was something with somebody, they had a sort of a agree to disagree kind of moments. Like Gary Farmer was saying, they used to have natural fires here. There's 70 years of fuel on the floor of the forest. That was all kind of interesting. So they didn't it wasn't that he was right about everything necessarily, but so that was kind of another interesting part of it too. But yeah,
little story moment. Katie, what did you think of the story itself? Like, did it flow for you? Did it work for you? Any, other than, story, Katie, speak to us.
Yeah, the story worked for me. I think that, and the way that they executed it, going,
No wave for you from Jim there, Jelly Duck. Apparently.
Sorry, I was
Katie.
checking out our
continue.
YouTube feed.
Yeah, so I think, the execution of the story worked for me as far as going back and forth between him doing the hike and him going back to his memories. I think that was a good play there. I also like the story in that I think it probably, it's based on a true story, so I'm sure most of, they made change, and then it was written to a book, and then so there's going to be some changes along the way.
Affiliate link in the description, folks.
Yeah, so there's gonna be changes along the way as far as what's in the movie versus what he actually experienced. But I think that it wasn't. I think what played out is probably what would similarly play out for somebody doing something similar. So somebody taking a month-long hike, it's gonna be a lot of walking. There's gonna be some animal encounters. There may be some accidents along the way, but there isn't gonna be anything, huge spectacles or anything like that. So other than emotional turmoil perhaps, but
slice of life stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And so watching this movie, I don't know if either of you have seen The Way with Martin Sheen.
Walking the El Camino.
Yeah, have you seen that one? Yeah. So
I haven't. No.
Okay. So Martin Sheen's character, he hikes the El Camino after his son dies, starting the hike himself.
The son being Emilio Estevez, his actual
who's his
son.
Yeah, in real life.
Yeah. Who wrote and directed the film.
Yeah. And I thought that film was, and I enjoyed that film too. One of the big differences between the two is that with the Dark Divide, his encounters are one-offs and they're brief, whereas in The Way, he sort of befriends a couple characters that, you know, they end up traveling together group, which would actually probably happen in that context too, because
more
that
the
hike
nature of the Camino, like it's
exactly,
it's not a
it's highly
wilderness
trafficked.
adventure.
Mhm. Yeah, it's like people from all over the world travel there, whereas I think it
There's
sounds
walking
like
paths,
yeah,
as they
it
tell
sounds
us.
like with the Dark Divide, like that hike was barely even developed when he was doing it. When I was looking online, they do have because I was like, hey, I don't want to do the whole thing, but I'm like, it'd be interesting to see some parts of it. So they do have day hikes and everything else, so you can hike parts of it, and I think that would be really interesting to see. And it actually also watching the movie and the story unfold, it kind of reminded me of, you know, just personal experiences, not just other movies I've seen. Like Richard and I were talking afterwards how it reminded us of hiking the scenery more so than anything, Juan de Fuca Trail on Vancouver Island. So, but I thought the story unfolded.
Did either of you guys see a hero's journey in there?
A which?
A hero's journey. Like there seemed to be that kind of
Joseph Campbell.
yeah, that Joseph Campbell, like right down to in the belly of the beast. Like they're like, I mean, these, even as he's coming closer to the midpoint, all of a sudden that's when the Bigfoot idea comes up, and the in the kind of argument about indigenous and when I say myth, I don't mean that in a pejorative sense. Oh no, I'm sounding like Pyle sounded. I don't believe in it, but I don't not believe or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's a great midpoint moment where there's this kind of, he's going deeper into this forest, deeper into the dark, and is starting to deal with like each of these obstacles are almost like mythical creatures, right to the midpoint, and he almost gets shot. You're Bigfoot. It's like, wait a second, what the and then even at the last where it's almost like he's gonna kill himself, and then he almost does kill himself, and it's that right at that last moment that he's at his worst, that he's got to make a choice on whether to live, to come back to the light, to the living, or just sit there at the in Hades and die,
Yeah.
Well, and he was stripped of almost everything, right? He had his underwear, he had his light, and his boots, and that's it. Like, he left all his stuff. It's that sort of stripping the hero down to the bare essentials, and it was really quite bare essentials, pun not intended. But the his gear and stuff was not there, and it was a very, the way it was filmed with all the sort of the water droplets, catching the focus of the camera. Very surreal, and he took, I think, the director for having that sequence, because there's a couple scenes where David Cross's character Bob sort of whips by the camera, and he's running by and he's barely in focus. And it went on for a bit, and just to convey the whole thing. But I thought it was kind of sometimes those sequences. Camera,
no big movement,
and
no.
Sometimes those sequences don't work for me, and in this case, I think it did, and it didn't surprise me either, because I thought, this is that kind of darkness moment. It's the Jesus being tempted on the cross, or whatever. It's
the 40 nights,
any number of those. Key
moments.
So I thought that was kind of an effective sequence there, but. So I'm not super familiar with Joseph Campbell. I sort of plan to be this summer, but with my reading and whatnot. But there was going on there that struck me as being symbolic of other dreams, especially that getting stripped of everything. That they do that with even Thor in the Marvel movies. They strip him of everything. It's that sort of, it's like a test or something of a hero, and then of course
loses.
He's going to make it. He eventually wrote a book about it. So
well, the first thing he loses is the thing he got from his wife, the umbrella. So one of the first things that's taken from him, and he falls in the water, and it's just loss after loss, and he's still his, oh my goodness, is very Joseph Campbell. His ego is just, nope, I've been done wrong, like right at the moment with like at that midpoint with that family, that bit of found and, you know, an effed up family, angry young man, angry young Indigenous man. And oh God, if there's somebody who has the right to be angry, like in a North American context, it's a young Indigenous man. You know, the broken, like, I mean, cause that's just such a part of our, you know, a broken old bigot, but he's found some love with this woman, this Indigenous woman, her grandmother, you know, it's like, oh, Native Granny, you know, you get these, and they're having this moment where they're talking about this stuff. But yeah, he had to be, even there, he's like, no, I'm not, he's not ready to let go. He's not really to really be stripped. And it's only when he literally I don't know if this was an idiot moment for you, Katie, or your husband, but, you know, there he is at the moment, at the end of, like, he's stripped right down. It's like, what the hell, I'm going to crawl in this hole.
Yeah, know? I think, it was for Richard, yeah. Idiot moment.
But by then, though, I wasn't even, it's like, no, he's just not... He's at that moment where he's going to break. He's either going to give up.
Yeah, you're at that mental point for sure.
Yeah, he's going to give up, or he's looking for something, and that's the point where he also is like, "Fuck it, I'm getting out of this hole. I'm going to live. I'm going to live."
Yeah. And then one of the neat things that they did is they came out in a place where you recognized that he had been in before, that preceded where he left his bag. So as soon as I saw that sort of rock shelf with that's where he emerged from. He thought, well, now he's just got to retrace his steps, because if he didn't find his gear, he would have been screwed. But it's
and how often
the little scene too where he
sniffed around a little bit, pulled a few things out without just tearing it all apart.
And they did there too. When he got to his bag there, they did have been like every time.
So
when he tried to leave the marker, and then you just saw that. Oh, I was just gonna say, when he tried to leave the marker, the yellow T-shirt, and it just went, you know, without him noticing. So he,
Well, because he's so exhausted. There, I'm giving him not idiot marks. I'm giving him, I'll just stick this here. Anyway.
Yeah. But even
that
campfire. That campfire scene was a nice long scene. I quite liked it. It was one of those breathing scenes, and it sort of allowed everything to sort of slow down a bit.
Important.
And even the thing, when they asked him, "Are you married?" because he had his ring on, he said, how did he phrase it? He didn't say she was dead, but they figured it out, right?
I was.
Or are you married?
Was.
Yeah.
No,
I was
she
married.
Didn't leave
me.
When did you break up?
Yeah, she didn't leave.
Yeah.
And then he's quiet about it, and they all sort of went, okay, we get it.
And then the cranky old bigot kind of pulled back a bit and went, okay, not my time to be a jerk.
And I think they inferred that it was fairly fresh too. So, you know, the other thing too is that we haven't talked about yet is that whole thing, like Debra Messing's character, Tia, saying, I played a practical joke on you. You'll find out in a few weeks. And then he got the Guggenheim envelope. And he goes, what? What was it?
Oh, Tia.
$11,000? Yeah.
Well, then he's happy. He's on Tia. And then it's like 30 days. What?
Yeah. I
thought of Katie,
I was going to say another, when you're talking about the fire scene, it reminded me of another idiot scene was when he's lighting the matches and he lights a match and then he lights 3 at a time. And we're thinking, like, how many do you have? Like, this is your first day.
We didn't see a match after that, did we?
Yeah.
Like,
no.
You know, like that's where he's losing that bit of human, that moment.
Desperation, I guess.
Absolutely. But it is. It's like even the girl guides are saying, you really should put your pack up high in a tree or fucking the bears will keep eating your stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I love
I've
those
got
moments.
a tiny bit of a.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead. You love those moments?
Yeah, no.
I was just gonna say,
Speak, Jim.
tiny bit of before we get off story. This occurred to me, I think earlier. Oh no, when you were talking to Dan and you were talking about WandaVision, which of course was the series that we did last week. And I was thinking there's a lot of parallel. I'm not saying it's identical, but there was actually a lot of parallels between WandaVision and The Dark Divide. You know, you have a widow / widower dealing with the death of a character who's, while dead, is still present. You know, which I think they handled nicely, and then goes off into their own little world to sort of deal with that. Like thematically, there's a lot of parallels here. Absolutely. Not identical, of course, but I thought, it just occurred to me this afternoon. I just thought, they're not dissimilar in a certain way.
This is sort of like, I was being facetious in the description, saying we're going to take a look at grief this week, you know.
Oh yeah,
as opposed to the last thing, which is all about a woman processing her grief, you know. And like I said, I almost want to watch back kind of every character, because they're little gatekeepers, like to use that Joseph Campbell kind of, because Carmen Esposito is that first threshold guardian. You have the heralds. Now we can take back. Now I'm going to go on a bit of a tear, guys.
Sure.
So Richard says, found the cocktail party scene interesting, where he was getting sort of mocked by colleagues because they knew he was hopelessly impractical. Really helped establish the characters, the couple, you know, who they were. Yeah, absolutely. And also in his reaction to them, he's like, "Oh, you just be mean to me." And I would argue, actually, they're the first ones to say, "You're not going anywhere. You're not prepared. You've been planning this forever. Have you even camped?" Like, I mean, and it's stuff that you would hear. You would hear from colleagues. You might even hear from friends when they're sick of hearing you talking about this grand plan, where they start to get maybe a little pissy. They've heard it one too many times. They've had a cocktail. They'll apologize later, but at the time they just decide to be a dick about it, right? But I think, though, again, you could look at the hero's journey as a great kind of guide. These are those first folks who are saying, don't do this. You're not ready. You don't have the stuff. But it isn't until Carmen Esposito, there he is. He doesn't even know where to go. And while she helps him, because everybody in a weird week helps him. Like, they never just, you know, Gary Farmer saves him from getting his, like, who knows how badly those loggers would have beat him, you know. Does give him a cup of coffee, and even maybe not educates him, but gives him a bit of political and ideological pushback. They all have a role to play. They're all challenging him, challenging his assumptions. But yeah, she's that first threshold guardian. That is the point where it's, you continue, you're in it. You know, that is the go moment where it's really where the first act ends and hinges into the second act, into the real conflict, is when he basically blows them all off,
grabs a bag of peanuts,
grabs a bag, hungry work, going on a 300-mile hoof. But I think, and that's like each of those characters that he does meet. They give him grief, but they give him help. You know, they educate both, and this kind of hooks into theme. But at least on the story point, I do think the hero's journey would have a real, I think, can inform the way the story worked out. And it's too bad. I even half expected, because you see a slow rack focus at the very end of the movie. So credits are rolling. You got this wonderful scene that I'm using for a backdrop. It's just his pack, and and I was just, it's like, and I might even watch it again. It's like, do we see anything in the deep shadows as the focus goes from pack and pushes into the deep forest? Do we see a Sasquatch go by? Do we see some glimpse of something? Because remember, just before, like there was a moment where he was up on a hill yelling, and there's some movement in the deep, like far off distance. It's like, you're fucking calling a bear, you dumbass. But is that a Sasquatch moment? Is that a, and maybe they just couldn't quite make it all work. And I'm kind of glad they didn't try and make it all work. Be interesting to see what the book says. Like, I mean, you know, because it sounds like he lectures on this as well now.
Yeah.
As one is wont to do, as one does, lepidopterist and a Sasquatch expert.
What's Latin for Sasquatch?
But yeah, I think that I do. I think that story model, that story way, really works in this kind of journey. Even though, and it is nice to see it because it's John Truby talks about it. It's like, listen, not Hollywood is all about the hero's journey. Not every story is a Western warrior myth, though. So maybe it shouldn't be used for everything. But I think in this case, it really worked while not feeling like hyper-masculine or, you know, you felt like it was a real person going through a real thing. And everyone he meets is, while mythic, is also real. You buying any of that, you guys? Or,
you
know,
absolutely.
The chat, they're all like going, what the hell is Kristjansson talking about?
Yeah, I noticed that thing about on the end credits too, and I just I looked up, you know, and at first the backpack is in focus. It's kind of a nicely little composed shot.
Yeah.
And then I sort of looked down. I guess I was taking notes, and I look up again, and the back's out of focus. I thought, am I supposed to be,
pushing at this into point, the forest?
2 a.m, minus an hour, so it was like 3. I thought I got to bed, but yeah, it was. Yeah. I thought this is sinister, but I didn't see anything, but. I thought it was kind of a little gag, sort of. But, I mean, very funny in parts, too. I laughed out loud a number of times, especially... He sort of was waiting...
You may need to repeat that, Jim. You kind of cut out there for a bit.
Oh, okay. Just the great moment where he's getting up in the morning and he sort of looks out at the horizon and he turns around and there's a great big thunderhead approach and you just see his shoulders slump. And then it cuts to him sort of frantically trying to get his things together. But there was a couple thunderstorm shots that were great like that. But,
I also liked the moment.
And like that sort of weird sense of...
Yeah. I like the moment where he... you know, he thought that those, I guess they were,
the forestry,
the motorcycle, the what's
the forestry guys?
Well, when they saw him, when they thought he confronted them, and he said, "You think I grabbed my pants?" And he
those guys. Smell, yeah. Sorry, Katie.
And then he's like trying to confront them, and then he's like. Second guessing himself. He's like, why would they think that it's on the outside of my pants? He's like kind of going through it in his mind. And I'm like, that seems like almost a Tobias moment, actually, a little bit from Arrested Development.
But doesn't it also kind of remind you, like the way when you've been embarrassed in grade school or even high school, you know, those when it's like, it's not that I didn't pee myself. I got splashed at the water fountain or whatever. And trying to explain it is just digging yourself in deeper. The bullies are like, ooh, let's reel him in.
Yeah.
He's bit.
Yeah,
you can pick on him all day for this.
Yeah.
All we did is say one shit-ass comment. Now we got him hooked for the whole day.
Yeah.
Oh, that's too bad, Shashank. But thank you very much for dropping by. Katie, yeah. Thank you.
Yes, thanks.
Give you a wave.
Pull it back to you.
All right. So before we end on story, I do actually want to get back to really the final moment when he's in the car and he's having the last moment. It's also a great, again, if we're going to look at this as like a myth, and I kind of like this model, I've fallen in love with it. It is also a great moment of the forest going, you stick around, we will kill you. Like, it's time to go.
Yeah.
Get your
You
jacket.
believe how many times we could have just bumped you off. We cut you some slack. Yes. Yeah.
Here's your
you have
jacket.
Your coat.
Yeah.
Get the. Look, I only have 3 more of these owls left, but I'll use them all. I'll take you out. Because it was like he just, I gotta get out. It peels out. It's like he has not become one with the forest. He is like, he survived the forest. It's all its grandeur, its beauty, its uncaring beauty. It's, but there's that last little, okay, you got to get out the door now. Okay. Yeah, exactly. Get your coats on, off you go. But it's still cold and I haven't zipped up. You should get on that.
Isn't the final shot actual tail lights, or is it like just the tail lights and the sort of the cut of the road?
Yeah, him just taking off. Like he gets hit by the bird, the car gets hit by the bird, and off to civilization. Like he's in his car on a road,
Sort of
and I just think
equivalent of the equivalent of the haunted house collapsing.
The haunted house closing the door. Like it's like, okay.
Yeah,
and you're getting kicked. It's your kick in the ass. Don't let the door hit you on the way. Oh, apparently we have to hit him with the door, or in this case, an owl. Which again, given the politic, which is probably this is a perfect moment to move over into the meaning. But given the given the politics within the show, it's a great bit to actually bump off an owl, spotted or not.
Yeah.
This is the last moment. The last moment he spends in the forest is
destructive.
I'll piss around a little bit, whistle.
Yeah, that was
unintentionally destructive. Sorry, Katie.
Yeah, that was another idiot moment here.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
It's like, what are you doing? You're done. Like,
but an
off you go.
Idiot moment. Like I could see myself, like you have something like that, and all of a sudden you linger a bit because you're like,
well, yeah.
This was a big spiritual, emotional, psychological journey.
Yeah.
The forest is like, yes, it was. Fuck off now.
Hit the road, Jack.
Yeah.
So meaning. I'm kind of wondering how you guys think, like you got, I think there's almost like 2 narratives or two strains of meaning going on. You've got the whole idea of just that again, another grieving thing, maybe 3, there's that idea of grief and managing grief and working through grief and changing because of it. Also even a grief and, or let's say the forest is a mythical place. It's the dark divide. And so you're going into a dark place and it is mythic. It doesn't mean that it is dangerous, but it's not malevolent. Like you never get the feeling, you do get the feeling of danger, but not malevolence, other than other human beings. But, but I think there's something being said there. And then of course, some of the politic, although at times, I don't know about you guys, like when Gary Farmer's character, he was sincere and I liked that character was there to kind of give that give that voice, that opinion, and it didn't feel at no time was he a caricature. Even the loggers didn't feel like rednecks. This isn't Deliverance. But at the same time, there's a part of me that's like, oh my God, are we going to start talking about sweeping the floor? Like, we could thin the stand. It's like, no, I've seen that patchwork clear cut. That's not thinning shit. That is making a crater,
Yeah.
But but there is a politic to it. And I'm wondering, is it trying to like kind of thread a needle there, or do you think it comes down on one side or the other? What do you guys think on any of that? I don't know. Katie, you want to go first?
Sure. I think I think the prominent theme that came out for me, like if there are different meanings, I should say, I don't think they were distributed equally in the film, like as far as each having the same amount of presence or the same amount of presence as the other. I certainly, the loss and the grieving came out the most for me. I had read some, like pretty briefly, had read some reviews before I watched the film, and there were some critics talking about, the environmental component and the political component. I thought that meaning was there, but I don't think it was as prominent as the loss and the grieving and the overcoming of it. So I don't think, so those other themes were, I would call, or other meanings were more like sub meanings in a way, I guess, for me.
Well, almost like, I agree with you. Like, I think the mythic is just almost like the meaning structure they put the psychological on top of. Like there's a foundation under the psychological process they chose, whereas the political, it's there, but part of it is, he did do this in the 90s. It was there. So are they even trying to make a message or just trying to acknowledge the context as honestly as they can?
Yeah. Like that's just it was interesting after, like I read those reviews before I watched the movie, and then I was like, well, it was there, but it wasn't like I may have just been the way I interpreted the reviews, but I'm like, it was there, but not as much as I had interpreted from the reviews that I'd read. So,
what do you think, Jim?
Yeah, I mean, thinking about the disease that claimed his wife, cancer is largely, I mean, sometimes it's genetics, but it's also an environmental, thing a lot of the times too, and his interest in the environment as well. I think that sort of dovetails in an interesting way. I think it's just sort of, a lot of it was kind of the I guess it depends where he was in his. I didn't get the sense that they were floundering in life, right? So this wasn't like City Slickers, where, where she says to Billy Crystal, "Go get your mojo back" or whatever. So I don't think it was something like that, but I think it was.
No, she was worried about how he would do after she dies. It seemed to be like a main character point, like.
Yeah. I think this was more about the stages of life, right? And so, using the environment as a sort of a through line is that, make sure you have something to do to take up your time because I'm not going to be here. It was coping, almost like the, not so much that earn this, that line from Saving Private Ryan, but it's sort of like, don't stop, like don't become a static figure, like continue your life. I won't be here, but continue on with
yourself. Like in those sescenarios that happens. If that person can't find that new thing or process it, that because a piece. There seems to be a fair bit of research that shows like just the way we wire to each other. Neural pathways die because they're no longer firing because they're not around that person that got those neural pathways to fire. It's why people say, I think I lost a part of myself. Because, there's a part of your brain that is no longer acting anymore. Like it's apparently one of the reasons why people will, ruminate in those memories. Why, it's almost a great way when he sees the little flowers and he's like, and he has that little mini meltdown when he's no, like he can't get trapped in those memories anymore. But you can see why somebody would. You're chasing a high. You want to be anything to just fire those memories again, fire that feeling of completion, And I don't mean it in a romantic, you complete me. I mean, but we adapt ourselves to each other. You take something so important out of somebody's life, there's a piece of them that is dying, Now I'm getting.
It's funny you mentioned the flowers. It's funny you mentioned the flower scene because it strikes me as amazing.
Any married person
the things that you forget, even though
I
you
should
just
go hug my spouse. Sorry, Jim, I cut you off there.
No, I just seeing that I had actually forgotten about the flower scene until now that you just mentioned it, and I mean that was kind of an interesting bit there, but it handled grief in a real kind of an interesting way. I mean, this was the solution, right? To go on this ridiculous journey, and those were miles, folks, not kilometers. Those were 132 miles or whatever it was. Miles always
makes it seem
trying
longer.
to add them all up, right? Because it's like, I don't think, was it just 129 miles to the Gort? Or I thought it was like, I guess it would be. It wouldn't be this many miles, then add another 30, then add, and then 120. It was probably 129 miles all the way. But of course, it's up over a mountain and back down.
Yeah. And sort of there's plains and like a few, like plateau and that
I don't think it was like a well-developed trail either. It's at that time it seemed like he was like pretty much the only one on it. It seemed so, other than the odd local
dirt bikers.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
and loggers.
I don't know how you
indigenous folks getting the grapes that
berries.
by a gentle person's agreement. That side, they were the only ones allowed to, not grapes or the berries.
Berries.
Yeah.
Berries, yeah.
Which is a nice
I don't know how you feel, Katie, but I love when you're, on a hike or something and you see a sign. I just love those. They're such interesting little, you sort of, depending on if it's super hot or just a hard trail or whatever. I'm not a master hiker. I don't really do overnights or anything like that, but they're just a little, letting you know. They're like little, I don't know.
No,
you're on the right track.
Portents of that you're on the right track. Others have been here. You're this much, through little maps too and stuff like that. I love all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
it's kind of
well, definitely up here in Canada, the kilometer markers are they're reassuring, and also I find for myself personally that there's the longest hikes I'll ever do is usually the longest ones I'll ever do is a day hike but I'll do 20 plus kilometers. And I'll always have a marker near the beginning, and it's usually a loop of some kind. So I'm coming back to some of the same places, or I'm going to be passing something coming back that I passed coming in. And usually a marker for me is something that was closer to the beginning of the trail. So when I get there coming back, I'm like, oh my God, we are almost done. We're almost done. So, and one of them, like one example is if up near Thompson, Manitoba, there's Kristjansson Falls, which boasts the highest waterfalls in Manitoba. But it's it's an over 20 kilometer hike to get there and back. And there is a bridge closer to the beginning of the trail that goes over goes over some water. And sure enough, coming back to that bridge, I was thinking, yes, we're almost done. We're probably at least really like maybe 4 kilometers away tops. It's like we are almost done. Yeah. So I totally know what you mean, Jim. Like
so close.
Yeah. That's always it.
Yeah.
That's usually one of them for me, is just one that's closer to the beginning, especially when you've been hiking for 6 hours or longer. I love those. I totally agree.
Yeah.
Super cool.
As great as hiking is, sometimes you just need that reminder, that sort of sense that you've been going, at a pace or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
Did you guys ever, in your hiking journey, I remember years ago, lived in Calgary, younger man, much more in shape. And we got into backcountry skiing and went on a couple of backcountry trips. And I remember like going, wow, I really am out in the sticks. Even though the trail is maybe not groomed, but boy, it seems to be awfully in good shape. But then you'd come across these Parks Canada markers in good shape. Like for whatever reason, one of the trails we were on, they were in really good shape. And it's like avalanche warning next 30 meters. And they'd be semi-regular. And it just kind of, it took some of this mountain man, He-Man thing I had going, I'm in the back country. Oh, look, a bureaucrat came and said, yeah, we should warn people about this next 30 meters. We've checked it. We've reviewed it. Somebody said, yes, it is. There's a test. And they actually went, there's a form, and a crew got sent out. Tick, 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 tick. And not just tick, tick, because it's like a big hunk of iron and a really nice sign, not huge or anything, but a nice sign. It's like, no, they had a crew. There's guys, they had to drill holes in rock or something, And I always found that was like a weird little, it's like, okay.
I'm probably the opposite. I really enjoy seeing a Parks Canada sign that tells me
I'm just talking about some of those moments. The rest of it, I'm with you guys. Like okay, I'm not lost. Just these moments where it's like, oh well. Yeah.
Well, and actually, one thing, kind of talking about trails, coming back to the movie, one thing I noticed was that I didn't see a lot of, and I think you would find it there, especially if the trail is not developed. I didn't see like really awful walking ground. Like I've been on even provincial hiking trails where the trail is just, well, actually in BC, in the Byron Lakes area, I did a canoe and portage trip there for about a week back in the early 2000s, and it's well-trafficked trail, but some of those trails with portaging your canoe and everything, they've just destroyed they've just destroyed the trail where you end up walking around it and everything else. So that's one thing I didn't see in the movie for a place wasn't maybe because nobody walks in that area. Nobody really had walked in that area, but yeah, where he was walking, it seemed like it was, not easy, but like it looked like the path or something like that. Whereas I would have thought for something that's not developed, you would see a lot more rough walking terrain.
Guidelines at best.
Yeah, exactly.
Or a game trail.
Yeah, so you would maybe just see like just the traffic of others that have walked on it. Nothing constructed.
Now that we're editorializing on the quality of the trail, I think we've kind of run out of gas on this.
Yes.
But listen, before I think it is. We're winding up. But before we get into talk about the director, we'll and then we'll get our final thoughts. But before that, I think it's time for Mr. Chaboyko. Let's get the focus on you there, sir. Actually, you know what? We'll do it pretty like this. Okay. Jim, why don't you tell us about, I mean, of course, tomorrow night we are going to be taking a look at the 93rd Academy Awards nominations with our good friend Cody Brockup from the Brockup side and Sean from Lost in the Reel. But Jim, I wanted to ask you, what's the movie we're watching next week as we move into Oscars zone?
We are watching in the highly anticipated to be nominated for Oscars One Night in Miami, a film by Regina King, actually, directed by Regina King, fresh off The Watchmen, acting in The Watchmen, but she's pulling directing duty in this. And it's the gathering of four amazing minds back in the day. And
Very
should
cool.
be pretty neat. The fellow who plays Ali is Canadian as well, so there's a little local.
Oh wow!
Little plug, yeah.
Awesome.
And he's fairly new to
that.
the scene, I think, as well.
Yeah. Thanks for that, Jim. Folks, yes. So that's next week, 9:30 Sunday, March 21st, 9:30 p.m. Central Daylight Time. And so hopefully we'll see you here. Come check out the movie. It is a Prime original. Check it out on Prime, and then come and hang with us, and we'll talk about it. We'll see if it's successful. I think, interestingly enough, just for you folks who may not be aware of how the Reframe project calculates whether or not it earns a stamp, it does say it has to have a minimum at least 2 points in the lead or lead and director category, kind of that super top of the line, and it can be either a woman in the director role and a woman in the lead role, top billed, white, or if either is a woman of color, then that gets 2 points, and that's a minimum requirement. So, alrighty, they're at least semi-qualified for a reframe stamp. So, the more you know. All right, guys, let's get into our second to last feature. Before, and you know what? Actually. Richard says, plus he was stopping a lot to look for butterflies. He was stopping a lot to look for butterflies.
Yes.
All right, guys.
And moths.
And moths. You're absolutely right. Okay.
My worst nightmare.
You know what, though? That one, you're a very rare fellow, and he was going to capture it, and then he lets it go because he's really starting to just be in the forest, not necessarily, grab everything.
Yeah. That was good. Yeah.
It actually looked the thing looked kind of pretty. I had a little moment of, well, they aren't all disgusting. Squish the rest of them. And that's a hot take.
That's great.
Hot take.
You got the echo going.
You guys get the best from me. Rob's not screwing around here.
Yeah.
All right. So I'll start with you, Jim. Did Mr. Putnam, did the director pass or fail?
Pass. Absolutely.
Excellent. Do you want to put any spin on that? Flying colors, barely pass, but only that, not.
No, I think it was a really well told, really well shot movie. I know, there's other players involved, but I thought some of the decisions made, just it went. It was a
solid
really
pass.
It moved well. Also, yeah, solid pass.
Okay, all right. Katie, pass or fail? Mr.
Pass.
Putnam, pass or fail? Pass.
Pass.
There we go.
He's come a long way from his Paris Hilton movie making days.
Hottie and the Naughty. The prequel.
Haven't even seen it, but I just know he's come a long way.
Yeah, and I would agree with you guys. Like the only, and I suspect they just couldn't dig into it and keep the flow like they did. And it is a really, in many respects, it's almost like a one-person show. If David Cross wasn't delivering like he did, committing like he did, you know, I don't, you don't have a good movie here. That said, yeah, a solid pass. Pass, maybe not flying colors, but an A. Gets an A from me. All right. Next. Final thoughts. What did we miss? Is there anything else, Katie, you wanted to say that that maybe we just didn't cover, or I cut you off, or keep them brief? I can cut people off more than once. But
nothing. Not that I can think of. I guess the only thing we can talk about it now, or we can maybe talk about the next time I'm on the show, is your thought. I had mentioned earlier the number of travel movies that are out there, and I was interested in knowing more about what you were going to say about that. But you can let me know if you want to talk about it now or for another time, another show.
I think that's almost fudge. You know what? Can we should do this again anyway. Well, I'm sure there'll be one other travel themed movie.
I guess that's just a reminder that we can talk about that next time.
I think there's something to explore there, though, Katie. You're absolutely right. Like, I mean, we have. I couldn't say, oh, it's set in Paris, therefore travel movie. You know, it's a that's a location. Whereas I think there's some like crime road movies that really do get a flavor of Nomadland is a travel movie, you know, and one that we may actually watch as part of our march to the Oscars. So who knows? Might have you back sooner than you think, Katie. But I think maybe what we'll do is we'll put a pin in it and we'll discuss it further. We'll make it almost like a special subject to discuss within the next time we look at one of these.
Okay.
I think you've touched on something that's worthy of real time, like a section to talk about. So
and that was the only thing I was curious to know more about. But I'd rather save it for another time and go more into depth than just kind of skim it now. So
that work for you, Jim? I'm gonna say
absolutely.
Yes.
What?
Is this TV show still on?
Did I freeze?
Do you have your jacket?
No, you just I'm gonna say you didn't freeze. You just weren't paying attention. It's like,
oh,
I'm surprised you didn't have.
There must have been a lag or something. Yeah.
And then looking up. Oh,
I think
TikTok.
My.
Okay, now you did
I'm freezing.
Yeah. Okay. So you have an excuse.
Am I back? Uh-oh.
Yeah, you're back. Okay, Jim. Let's put you up next. What? Any final thoughts? What did we miss? What did we blow past that you may want to just touch on now before we wrap everything up? Before I kick you all into the green room for a post.
The only nice
chat
little
where we go.
note,
Shit, should have said that. Oh, sorry. Yep.
The only note that I think we didn't mention was his insistence on him being a Guggenheim Grant recipient. He sort of dropped that, and everybody that he mentioned that to, and it was sort of a self-deprecating moment where the writer gets to say, this is how ridiculous or out of touch this academic is. Nobody that he told about it knew what he was talking about. He said, "I've got a Guggenheim." He said he's got a gun.
Multiple times. Like I wanted to look it up. Is Guggenheim also a gun brand? I mean, there were all those robber barons.
No, I think he just misheard him. But it's like a MacArthur Grant or whatever, and but it basically he just kept on dropping it. I've got a Guggenheim, as if that sort of proves his competence or his right to be there or what have you. And I thought that was a nice little sort of character note.
Well, it's also like it would have fit perfectly in the cocktail party where he's still more the old Pyle. The old, he's the old guy, not the new man. He's the old man, dropping a name at a cocktail party, versus.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, the later guy who's like, let me tell you a story about going out in the woods. The owl landed right on my head. What was that, Katie?
Yeah.
Sorry?
Oh, I was going to say, I thought of a good final thought. And that is for anybody who's an Arrested Development fan. We finally got to see David Cross in his underwear, because in the show he always wore shorts in the shower.
That's right. That's
so
right too.
We've all been redeemed.
We saw more.
Yeah, exactly.
Than just him in his underwear.
It's so funny because I just thought of that now. I remember in the shower he'd wear like short jeans.
Hairy ape in a waterfall, or with a ponytail, chasing after a younger Debra Messing.
Right too.
They were just weirdo hippies in the forest.
Yeah, so that was interesting. It's just an interesting observation, considering he's well known for that role in his in Arrested Development. I remember thinking he takes showers with his jean shorts on. He's so self-conscious.
Like hot pants, jean shorts. Like, I mean, they were like
still seeing his legs. Yeah,
almost Daisy Duke-y kind of like.
Yeah.
That's
funny.
That's a great one.
Yeah, so that's my final thought.
and I think that's a perfect note to end on. I cannot top that, nor do I want to. Not that it's a competition. I want to just end on that note. Katie, much like when I was in the dinner party throwing mood, you know what? It was always nice to be able to depend on you to bring us home. You have brought us home.
Oh, thank you.
Note. That anecdote's perfect. All right, guys, I'm going to kick you guys into the green room, and while I say goodbye to all these wonderful folks, but why don't you guys, Jim? Why don't you say goodbye first?
He's frozen, I think.
You know
all right,
what,
folks? Thanks for.
Oh, there he is.
Wait, am I frozen again?
No, you're good.
You're good.
All righty.
Tricks and stuff.
Jim, we'll see you in the green room. Okay, Katie, why don't you say goodbye to everyone?
Goodbye.
Excellent. Couple of jazz hands.
Yeah.
Oh, now there you are. You're back. Okay, Katie, we'll see you in the green room. Yeah. All right, everybody. You know what? Another great show. A lot more intimate, which maybe is almost perfect for this kind of movie. But that said, you know what? Our folks, we are the best. You guys are the best chat on the internet. And I do want to thank even the folks who, you know what, because we all have lives, could only just drop by. I want to first of all say thanks for coming by. Ahmed, Jelly Badak, great to see you here. Thank you so much for coming. Richard, you as well. Thank you so much, Richard L., for popping in and checking it out and contributing. You made a couple of great points, and that was awesome. The Upside Dan, thanks again for coming by. It was fun last week, and thanks for dropping by tonight. That was super cool. Who else? Who am I missing? Shashank dropped by. Thank you very much, Shashank, our man in Chennai. Really appreciate that. And who else do we got here? I think I'm... Shashank? No, I'm missing someone. Give a thumbs up to Jim. He's got to go freshen up, apparently. More information than you probably wanted to know. Curtis, Mr. Judd. Curtis, thanks again for popping in and saying hi to us. Really appreciate that. And so on that note, folks, I think, let's see, what do I got to do here? I think it's really a moment of, let's pull down the tunes and let's cue the outro.
I've been in your waters.